Hey there, everybody. Chris Simmons and Michael Gebbin here with CreateInsights.com. And today, we thought we're getting a lot of requests on the Glidecam, Glidecam this, Glidecam that. And Michael, since you're kind of the ninja Glidecam artist, maybe I could just fire off some questions because even as a producer myself, I have some issues related to the Glidecam or really just questions in general.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So fire away, man. What are the
Yeah,
questions up front that you think, and then I'll get off on a tangent, probably.
I
But
I mean I think really if from the beginning if we can just kind of walk us through just when you first discovered the glide cam. I
okay.
mean, at what point did you look at that and go, "Man, I've got to have that." Just kind
Yep.
of walk us through that beginning journey.
Yep. That was back in, I believe, 2006, and I found I honestly don't remember exactly where I saw it. Something online. I saw videos and was like, "Wow, that can really up the ante of my productions." Like I just was drawn to it. I'm still to this day. If I did no shooting, but I got to run around and get sexy shots, money shots with the glide cam, I'd be a happy man. Like I just love that. But I found it, and honestly, it wasn't until the 5D came out in 2009 that I really got really good with it. Because what happened was, for the first even little bit, I didn't even understand how the thing worked. I had somebody else like trying to balance it. One of the guys that kind of worked with me and stuff, and I was just like, man, I don't understand the logic of how this thing is working. We couldn't get it balanced. It was wobbling all over the place. Then we ended up buying the smooth shooter, which was Glidecam's like full vest, and that thing was a mess. That thing like didn't quite work right how we wanted. We never understood it, and then got rid of that. And then I ended up, because I originally had it on a GL2, and I had a wide angle lens, and then I went to an A1, the Canon XH-A1 in HD, and that's where I got it balanced decently. But really, I ended up buying a Pilot because I was like, man, this thing's kind of heavy, and got caught up in this still motion rage where they had the Steadicam Flyer, it was like $8,000, and one of the guys there had the vest, which was the Pilot, which was still kind of expensive. I used that for a little bit, maybe a couple months, and then I got the 5D, and I was like, man, I'll throw this back on this glide cam. Because what I didn't like, I didn't be like tethered down. I was using a monopod and a tripod and a slider and all these things, and like you put this vest on, it was just a pain. And I was doing a lot of weddings at the time. I was showing up these weddings with this vest on, and I looked like a RoboCop or something, And it's like, I mean, it opened up some conversations, but I always felt awkward because I try to be that little ninja on the wall, all these things running around, and that drew a lot of attention to me. So I got the 5D, and for whatever reason, I don't remember why, I bought the 16 to 35 lens, and then I had the 5D, and I'd bought a battery pack. It had the two batteries in it. That's when my life changed. Well, for whatever reason, I got that thing perfect, and I just started flying around. Because one of the things I had learned that is a tip for people to keep in mind with the glide cam is that it's so important to be wide. It really is. It looks great to get tight, but you really have to be an amazing, you know, you have to be amazing on the glide. You have to be perfect, because the tighter it is, the more bumps and everything get exaggerated. So like I learned that a long time ago because I always had a wide angle lens to even exaggerate a little bit more when I was on the regular video cameras, and that always helped make my stuff. It already looked a little bit more epic because it was wide anyways, but it made, I wasn't ever perfect, but it covered up a lot of the little bumps and wobbles that I had. Because the tighter you are, if you're at like 50 millimeter on a DSLR, you got to have that thing almost perfect, because if it's not, it's going to show up all the little shakes and bumps and moves, and that's something else to keep in mind. That thing's got to be, we use the Bogan 577 quick release plate on the glide cam, because too many guys will like take their whole glide cam apart to screw the camera into it, and then when they want to go to a different device, they're like tearing it apart, unscrewing it, putting it on the other thing. So we have those Bogan 577 plates on everything. And essentially we can go from a tripod to a monopod to a slider to the glide cam like that. And I've got it balanced in a way to where all I have to move, if I do happen to switch lenses, is the plate that actually the quick release plate. So I loosen that and I move that on there and tighten it back up, because with the battery pack, it has two batteries and it helps center the weight. So you don't, because the battery's on like I think the right hand side, so it's really hard to get it to kind of balance out, because you're putting all that you can twist to get it to center up, and then it's almost not enough. But with the two batteries, it kind of centers your weight, and then all I have to do is move the plate back and forth, because when I switch lenses, it's not shifting it this way, it's just shifting it back and forth. So the 16 to 35 is my super ninja trick with the Glidecam. I would say the demo that we'll have associated with this, that's on YouTube right now, 99% was shot on the 5D with the 16 to 35 lens. And one thing to keep in mind, I'm on the Glidecam 2000, and we'll be having something coming out here. We've talked about this. We're going to be releasing, a Glidecam training. I'll also give a little bit more insight. It'll be from a separate source from myself, but it's a great resource. It'll have great training. But I'll provide a little of the ninja of exactly how my setup is. We can add that in. But basically, it's a Glidecam 2000. I'm actually not balanced properly. So most times it kind of drops pretty quickly, a couple seconds. Mine, when you hold the cameras here and the base is here, mine barely drops at all. So what that allows me to do is those shots where I'm kind of looking up and I kind of come down, I control that instead of it fighting it, and then you kind of lose what the Glidecam and the gimbal and all that does, because you'll be fighting it coming down. And so mine's balanced where it's a little bit heavier, and like I said, it's not quite balanced. I don't do anything really how you're supposed to do things sometimes. I just do what works. But yeah, that's how it's balanced. I'd have to get the weight. I don't have that all right here to talk about that, but there's a good amount of weight. It's kind of heavier, and the post is extended probably, I think, about that much, and then beyond that, I'd have to show it. But the whole thing is, if it's going this way, then you got to balance it. Everything's the opposite of what it's doing to center it out. So yeah, but then really from there, it's just practice, 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 practice. Because I've run into guys who I'll take my perfectly balanced Glidecam, and then they'll go shoot it, and they're still getting stuff that I'm like, man, are you kidding me? Like, this is what I can get out of this, and this is what you just got out of it, and I feel like it's perfect. But the reality is, their arm, it's so heavy, and they're not that strong. I got this like Popeye arm, and what happens is they're like, it's transferring just enough wobble and shake into that thing. So that's something that only comes with time, getting a little bit stronger of a forearm. And then from there, it's a light touch. You don't need to, like, when you're holding the gimbal thing right there, you don't need to have a death grip on the other thing. You also want to hold it, like the post, like, is right there and the handle's right there. I hold it pretty high. So I have my light touch pretty high. If you go down low, you have the ability to kind of be shimmying it back and forth, so you don't want to do that. But yeah, it's a light touch. It's a lot of practice, and to me, it's having a fairly heavy rig. But really, I have it to where I probably have a setup on it that I should probably be on the 4000, which is what a lot of guys are on. But with the balance that they'll achieve, they're pretty much only able to go straight or around. Those like down coming up shots, or the up looking down like that, there's special names for them, but I don't really have a special name. It's just the drop down shot. You'll see them all in my video, but you can't achieve that if you have a quick drop time on your Glidecam, which is how I think if you go to Glidecam's website, how they tell you to balance it. Well, if it drops 2 seconds and all this stuff, that's right. But for me, I just like it to where I can control it, and I kind of have full control of how I have the Glidecam. So, because I don't like to just fly around straight. I like to be able to get all that variety. That adds that dynamic. Sometimes people think my shots look like it has a crane.
So I guess that's really kind of what I noticed. The biggest thing I noticed, I mean, you and I essentially were working together in some form or fashion since 2007. Can you believe that? But the cool thing is, I guess it must have been obviously after you got the Glidecam, but I was messing around and was looking at your stuff, and I saw I guess it was one of your love stories, and the footage was just unbelievable. And I mean, I showed it to my wife, and she's like, wow, whenever, we get married again or whatever, we got to call that guy. And I was like, hell yeah, we do.
Right, I
And so it
remember
was
that. I
just,
was thinking, man, I wonder if I
yeah,
can work something out to work
yeah.
with this
I'm
guy.
telling you, I mean, it was just like just the cool, like starting up at the sky and then you come down. And I don't know if that's the one where you're in like Seattle or whatever, but I mean,
Yep,
it was
yep,
absolutely amazing.
yep.
So, all right, so obviously there's a lot of things that we're going to be offering that's related to the tech and the how-to and the nuts and
Hmm.
bolts with the glide cam.
Yeah,
But you know me, I'm the money guy. For me,
absolutely.
it's kind of like, you know what? If I can charge the same to have the camera on a tripod locked down with no movement as I can charge to have a full day of running my ass all over the place, holding this thing with the Popeye, and all that.
Right,
I mean, I much rather would opt for the, hey man, let's set this sucker up and grab a stool. But
right.
I know, I mean, obviously creatively, there's a reason for the glide cam, but I
Yeah.
guess kind of from a producer standpoint, my next question would be, what was kind of the aha moment, in terms of with the weddings or even some of your other work where
Yeah.
when you went out and you did this and that client saw that and they were like, "Oh my God,"
It
and
it
then, so go ahead.
it absolutely it originally came from the weddings. In the same day edits, I noticed because I do the same day edits. We show the highlight video that night at the reception, just a few hours after their ceremony. It's what I'm kind of known for and what catapulted me into everything non-wedding and everything that I've done. But I would notice that the biggest and all that kind of stuff came when those shots showed up in the edit. So I would be doing, you'd see this church, and I'd be on that 16 to 35 lens flying down this epic church's, aisle, and people were going, "Oh my God, what is that?" Or they'd come up to me afterwards and go, "I've been going to this church for 30 years and I've never seen it look like that." And that's just something that the static or tight or anything like that, I mean, just can't give you. Just cannot give you. And I've learned a great balance because I used to be very heavy with just the majority of my stuff. I'd fly around with the glide cam, but now like I have a purpose for it. And it's one I want to accentuate movement or I want to add more dynamic or the more energy into the shots because to me it's a signature for our work right now. The glide cam is one of the things that sets us apart from a lot of guys. It's coming up a lot more, but there's still a lot of guys who don't use it, like I'm saying, properly. They just randomly use it anywhere and everywhere, or they have it like in the wedding world. They'll use a wide lens like I'm talking about and do glide cam, but they'll be inside of a house with an ugly whatever, and it's just there's a mess, and you're showing this wide shot, and you're doing this glide cam, and it just takes you out. It's distracting, Whereas in those positions, I'm more on the tighter lens. You got to think of movies, movies, and using that shallow depth of field that you get out of a DSLR. You're wanting to have the focus be on something, right? Well, to me, I don't want to draw attention to this ugly room or this all this stuff everywhere and all these other things going on. I want the focus to be on the people that are specific in those shots. And that applies to anything. If you're doing corporate work, it's not always going to be necessary for you to be running around with the glide cam, especially if you're in a place where maybe the majority of the B-roll or shots is going to come from some blase office space. There's just not much to it. Now, the glide cam can add some sexiness, but to me, I'd question whether or not that's still relevant. That's where you might tie in a slider, and if someone's working at their desk, you have a cool little slider shot if you want to add some movement. But to me, it's always, does it fit with this environment? A lot of times in wedding world, I use it when I'm outside, when I want to show the church and I want to do this sweeping shot up to the church, or if I'm with the couple and we're outside running around, and they're holding hands or doing whatever. I'm kind of flying around. I'm adding some dynamic to something that would otherwise be boring, but also looks beautiful. So in the corporate world or in things like we did the baseball film that we had, in that, that's a high energy thing. So there's a good mix of solid shots where the energy and the motion's coming from what's happening in the frame. There's people moving, there's things happening. So it's still a static shot, but the movement is coming from in the frame. And then the other things is when we're flying around. Now we're adding the dynamic of the people moving in the frame, but we also have this cool sweeping shots. And it just helps for us. A lot of the edits and the things we do, revolve around emotion, impact, dynamic, keep the thing moving. A lot of our pieces are a little bit faster pace, so the glide cam really helps tell that story, helps add that dynamic to that piece. As opposed to something more serious, um, if it's a training video or something. I know you've done a lot of those kind of things. Like, I wouldn't question. I'd question whether or not that's always necessary in pieces like that. You're really trying to more tell. You have specific step-by-step things that need to happen, and adding all this motion and commotion to the shot might take away from the exact thing that you're trying to focus on.
Yeah, I would say that, I mean, I would, in the corporate world, I would say the glide cam is probably very much more of a marketing technique as opposed
Right.
to a training or an instructional. I mean, there are
Right.
situations in a training video where if you just want to show off a space, because see, that's the other thing. I mean, what people don't realize is there's a couple different audiences whenever you're producing a video for somebody. I mean, it's obvious
Absolutely.
with the weddings what it is, but if you
Absolutely.
look at a corporate in the corporate environment, I mean, number one, yeah, you're training, the employee, you're training the customer, whatever that is, but you're also trying to look for things that are going to knock the socks off of the client. I mean,
Exactly.
I don't care if it's a big, ugly manufacturing plant.
Well,
If you
and
got a
again,
glide cam,
exactly.
you
And
show it in a way that they've never seen it before, and they're going to call you every single time they have something to do.
and when I use the word ugly, I use that loosely because we have I get hired to do freelance work, and if I think you wanted to bring that up, we brought it up before we discussed this before. I get hired to do freelance work from this one company for that signature piece of equipment because I take the mundane, the ugly, the simple, and I make it look sexy, and that's the reality. And I have something that'll be in the new Glidecam demo that I'm putting together. That's from Continental Tire, and it's this freaking massive place where they produce these tires. And I got to be on the back of a like golf cart. And now I'm not running with the glide cam or walking, but I utilize the glide cam to sit on the back, and they're flying me through. It looks like I'm in some kind of sci-fi film, man, because I'm flying through this warehouse in the middle of the place with everything. It's this wide shot, and it is just like they've never seen it like that. And they've been a great client now and stuff. And so yeah, man, it absolutely in the corporate world can be used to knock the socks off of them and add just this sexiness to the piece that otherwise just locking it down on your tripod. I mean, I'm just that's not me. And so I mean, to me, I hate doing anything that doesn't have that dynamic in the shots. Whether it be, I mean, I'm a glide cam guy. I used to mess with the slider, but it became kind of a nuisance for me. Too much setup, at least the one I owned. So the glide cam, I could achieve things so much quicker. Plus, I can kind of put it right on my belt, and I can get solid shots too. But it allows me a lot of versatility to get solid shots, tripod type shots. Because I use the 1635 a lot, but in some environments and a lot of stuff I did for this one company, I was on the 24 to 105. So I'd be getting tight stuff for them. I'd be getting the flying wide shots. I could just do everything. But all my one tool was 5D, 24 to 105, and the glide cam. And that thing, I mean, and here's the big kicker. I mean, for this particular company, I mean, I had to work my way up a little bit, but I mean, literally, when people freak out about what they should charge for freelance rates and think that they got to do all this and that and the other thing and provide whatever, like, I can make $1,000 a day to show up with my glide cam, that lens, and that camera body, and that's it. Nothing else.
That's what I'm talking about, baby. That's what
So,
I'm talking about.
so
All right, so we could talk tech all day and creative all day, but really what you alluded to a second ago, at Create Insights, we not only want to teach people how to be better technicians and better creatives, but we want to teach them how to take those skills and make some freaking money, right?
absolutely.
So you had already mentioned the whole idea of $1,000 a day, and the other thing you didn't mention is basically at the end of the day, you're pulling that SD card out, transferring it to a hard drive. They walk away, you walk away, you're done, man. That's a grand in your
That's
pocket.
and
You
that's what
got no
people
processing.
exactly. And that's what people get caught up in too much sometimes is, I'm making right around 100 to 200 bucks an hour depending on what's going on in those scenarios. Whereas, yeah, you can go and get that job for yourself and your company at 4, 5 or 6,000, but guess what? You've got to now sell that job. And you've got to go through that whole process, the meeting them, proposals, the contracts, the emails back and forth. Then you go and shoot it. Maybe you shoot it by yourself, depending on what's going on, but you got to go through all that. Then you come back. Then you got to edit it. Then you got revisions. I mean, last time I checked it, after we've talked, if you can't be getting a lot more than a few $1,000s for that, you're better off trying to get some shoot only type of things on the freelance world, because even if you only got 5, 6, 700 bucks a day, again, that company, they want to use me religiously, and I have nothing that I have to do. They tell me, Michael, show up on this day. I show up, I give them the cards, I'm done. There's no selling process. They get an invoice, I get paid, you know. And that's the nice part about that, where it's not as sexy as getting a $4,000 job or something like that sometimes, but it's more profitable depending on your scenario and what's going on.
So if I had like the shooting skills that you do with this Glidecam, I think this is how I would play it.
Mm-hmm.
I would basically say, okay, if I wanted a freelance, let's say I didn't want to deal with selling the big jobs or managing the big jobs, I just wanted a freelance, and then I would niche it down even further and say, I just want to be, I want to be the Glidecam guy, the Glidecam guru in my market. So I would be promoting my Glidecam skills to the wedding guys. I mean, you'd be a second shooter. They pay you however much money to come in and just get the Glidecam shots.
For a few
I'd,
hours, too.
yeah, I'd want. Yeah, I mean, hey, we want you for an hour pre-ceremony and then maybe some recep, whatever. But the point is, like, then I'd go to the agency, which that's kind of what your client that you're talking about is more of an agency
Big
type.
agency, yeah.
They're selling the big stuff. So I mean, every agency in this town would have my Glidecam demo, and I wouldn't be talking about, oh, I can also edit, or oh, I can also do this. It'd be like, look, I'm the Glidecam guru, .com. I don't know if that's even available, but the point is, I'd go after those guys. I'd talk to the other production companies. I mean, I'd be talking to big agencies, small agencies, PR, marketing, advertising. I mean, the point is, if you're a good Glidecam operator, I bet if you're marketing properly, and there's other resources on our website that can teach people how to market in a better way. But if you're marketing properly, I'm not going to say that you can be working every day of the week, but I bet you could be working at least half the month, just as a
I
Glidecam operator.
I have come to the point where, and this sounds awful because some people would love to be in our positions, but the reality is, because I don't want to just be a freelance guy, I have the ability. I mean, one client, I only have is one, and I could make $30,000 to $50,000 a year from them, from
Right,
one client.
right.
And we're talking about, there's a million other options. I could, if I wanted to be, if I wanted to stop everything I'm doing right now, I could probably make $100,000 a year being a freelance shooter, shooting 5 days a week, just shooting from 9 to 5.
Well, and not even necessarily that. I mean, you're talking about 100 days of work to make 100 grand. I
Well,
mean, that's
exactly.
that's a third of the year, not even.
It
And
was.
and, I-
It was.
and that's the key. What people um, need to realize. I mean, I'm a high-end corporate producer. You're a high-end wedding guy, and you're doing high-end corporate stuff too.
Yep. Yep.
And the point is that, I mean, if there was a guy, and I mean, hell, even if it was like, hey, come out here, I need some cool glide cam stuff. I mean, I gotta
Chris,
feel like,
I gotta stop you for a second.
yeah,
I'm passionate about this, and since this one's my thing, I gotta butt
do
in,
it,
because it's
do it.
like, that is in high demand. Because I'll tell you what, right now in our company, that is our signature thing, and I'm not shooting all the time for my company. And the reality is, we've got one main guy who kills it on the glide cam, and if he's not available, Ryan is running for the hills for me, because he has
He's
no
trying to
one.
find you.
He has no one else. He's going. He
Yeah.
knows Gebby. He's like, Michael, I gotta have you. Jim, Jimmy's not available. I need you on this, because that's a signature thing in our work. And yeah, shooters and editors and everything else is a dime a dozen, and we can get that taken care of. But a guy that we could hire to do that, because even Ryan's running the camera some now. He loves doing that. So it is what it is. But it's like, he's just on the monopod with the 7200 or
Yeah.
whatever. But
Yeah.
but he can't run the glide cam, and not a lot of guys can. And so if you're out there listening, I would, because I know that there's two elements, and I'm going to bring this up that most people don't consider. Although my glide cam skills is an astronomical piece of why these guys hire me, and my shooting ability, myself as a person is just as equally important, because they're dealing. I have been hired. I mean, this company is getting 80 to $150,000 jobs, and they have sent me out by myself to deal and
Right.
shoot for a client that's paying them mega bucks. And I have had them say at the end of shoots sometimes, nothing to do with my work. They'd go, Michael, we love working with you. Our clients love you. You know, you're easy to work with. You're easy to get along with. All these kind of things. So for everybody out there, I'd want them to keep in mind that although it's important to be a great technician, the great shooter, a great glide cam artist, whatever, your personality is very important. And that's a brutally honest thing. But I mean, I'm not saying you can't get work and you can't do things if you don't like people or whatever. But the reality is that is really important because they got a lot of guys right now. I mean, and that's another thing that says a lot. I'm only speaking from the truth and from my heart. They got other guys they can get to shoot for half the cost of me.
Right.
They can get guys for 4, 5, 600 bucks. And the reason they'll come back to me is because I'm on time, I'm professional, I'm easy to work with, and I do a really good job. You
I
know,
have this kind of motto that I tell my freelancers when they go out to work for me. I said, look, number one rule, don't be a dick, period. I mean, if somebody says something you don't like, talk to them, figure out, are they sold on the fact that they really want that shot, or are they just, what's the deal? But you have to be professional.
yep.
And there's so many, I mean, that's a topic for a whole nother video, but the point is there is a whole lot that you have to do correctly, number one, to be a good freelancer and to be a high demand freelancer. Um, and again, I think it kind of goes back to everything else, and I'm sure some of our freelance buddies may disagree. But the point is, I mean, you could be an adequate freelance guy, glide cam, camera op, whatever it is, and if you're fun to work with and people enjoy it and they know what they're going to get and you're dependable, you'll get the job 9 out of 10 times over a guy who's super creative, super talented, but every time you talk to him, you feel like he's going to bite your head off
Oh,
because,
I
he
can
knows
speak.
more than you.
I've come to that world and just enough now. I only work with that company freelance. Otherwise, I only do stuff for myself right now. But because I really like these guys and it's a great company. But they've gotten rid of guys. Couple things. One guy, he's a douchebag, pretty much.
DB.
A DB, and
I like don't be a douche better now. I'm going to use that
okay,
one now
okay,
instead of
cool,
the other one.
good. Well, and the other thing, he was trying to steal their work.
Really?
Yeah.
See, that's
That
that's
that
like,
is that is real low, man. And
man,
so that's another thing to keep in mind. I don't care if you're on a wedding or whatever. I've shot for some of the big dogs. I've helped them out, and I've shot for people. There was no
yeah.
talk that I owned my own company. There was no handing out my cards for those people.
You're
That
like
is
you're white label, man. I mean, the
your
point
white
is,
label, exactly.
I mean, since we're on this topic, my best freelancers, what they do, anytime you're on a shoot, and even if I'm not there, the client goes, hey, so, do you work for Chris? Or are you on his full-time team? And it happens a lot because people are curious. And the best answer that he gives or that anybody can give is like, you know what? We work together all the time, and then if they dig even further, like, oh,
Which
well, do you work for him or do you work for your own company? You'd be like, you know what? I'm a freelancer. I work exclusively for companies like Chris's. That's it. That's all. I only work for producers,
yep.
and then that way that kind of eliminates the whole direct to hire. I mean, I love for them to just go, oh yeah, Six Strong Media is awesome, and we've been working together forever, whatever. But
Yep.
and it's like as a producer, if you're going to hire a freelancer, you have to educate them a little bit. I mean, I've been amazed at how a guy will show up wearing a shirt with his logo on it. And I'm like, seriously, I mean, in what planet does that make sense? So anyway, that's another soapbox. But all right, so we've been talking for I don't know half an hour now about all these awesome Glidecam things. So we're going to go ahead and wrap this up because Michael and I got to run. But the bottom line is, be on the lookout. We are going to be releasing some new Glidecam training content from one of our partner companies. It's going to be just epic, amazing, crazy stuff. I mean, hell, I might even watch it through and take a shot at it.
They
But
got some great work in there too.
it's funny. I mean, the further away I get from the day-to-day shooting of my company or of my career, the more I realize that I'm not as good as I thought I was. But I know there's a lot of you out there that are just amazing freelancers, really are getting a good handle on the Glidecam. But if you watch this content, you're definitely going to just knock it out of the park. And I mean, another option is if you become a Create Insider, you can go to the website, get some information about that. We're going to do a weekly coaching call, Michael and I, a group coaching call. And so if you sign on to those calls and you have some Glidecam questions, you can put those in the box. It'll pop up. Michael can see those and address those.
Yep.
And then, we'll just make sure that you guys, get what you need to be successful, not only in business, but also in the creative and the tech things. So appreciate you watching this video, and we'll talk to you soon.
Rock and roll.
All right, baby.
Peace, buddy.